Hello everyone, and welcome back to Tutorials of Tone, Bass Edition. My name is Alex. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is a special request from a bass pack buyer on the Gumroad store. So thank you, Harp Aurora, for reaching out, putting in your request, and helping me come up with some really cool bass tones with all of your suggestions that you found and compiled. This is diving into a Roland Jupiter 4, maybe an 8, 80s synth bass, and as you heard in the intro, a little bit of Don't You Want Me Baby by the Human League. Very, very fun tones in here and very usable on your gigs if you're playing wedding or dance band gigs or you're just looking to expand your bass palette. Here are some really cool tips to do that. Let's dive right in. So here we have our layout for our 80s synth bass preset, or our song-specific preset for Don't You Want Me Baby by the Human League. We are at 118 BPM for that song specifically. First up, we have our input block. Everything here is stock, but you may want to change the threshold of the gate based on your own playing style, how clean you can keep the finger noise, and how much of that chirp you may or may not hear from the synth block. So bringing this up eliminates that, keeps it out for a while. Just adjust to your own playing style. For now, I've kept this at the default settings. Next up in our chain is the synth block. This is the engine that drives this tone and this preset. So really dialing this in and paying close attention to all of the leveling parameters is crucial for getting this down. We have all three voices used and in different varieties. So first up, the bulk of our tone is the sawtooth lead. In order to select this, you will hit Type, find Sawtooth in the drop-down menu. There you go. 100% level. Everything else here is at stock settings. For voice 2, we have a square wave brought in at 25%, just a little bit for smoothing out and a nice liquid sound. We have this detuned -5 cents. This really helps to give a little bit more depth and width to the sound, support to that sawtooth, which is, as the name suggests, kind of like a buzzsaw. Now, upon listening to the original, I did notice that there's a little bit of an octave down sort of thing happening. So, copying our voice 1 over, and then shifting down -12 half steps, and mixing that in to 20%. So now let's hear each voice of the synth individually, and then we'll hear them all together. We're going to leave everything else on except the chorus, so you can just hear the sound of the synth and get in your ear the different wave types if you're unfamiliar. And now we hear them all together, again with the chorus off. A nice, cool synth bass sound. If you listen to the original track, there's even more lows cut out of this. I leave some in just for functionality, but to each their own. Next up, we have our filter block. This is crucial for getting that Jupiter bass sound. This is a low-pass filter with an envelope follower on the frequency, and what we do is set this to have that low 200 thing coming in, and as we sustain, we get just that low to maintain, but we get those highs on the attack to pop out. I've set the release time here on our envelope follower to 100 milliseconds to just keep things a little bit smoother, not so jumpy. And then I've set our max frequency to around 5600 hertz. This is just the tone that I was looking for this particular example. Feel free to juice this up if you need more highs. Or bring it down if you don't. One thing to note with our filter block is the Q shape. You can really change how this low pass filter with the envelope follower interacts by adjusting the Q shape. So here we have it at stock settings. If we crank it, we get a little bit more of a wah sound. Bringing it down really smooths this out. Very, very powerful and very, very cool. For this particular example, I leave everything stock, but feel free to dial that Q knob in to taste. Maybe even have that set to the expression pedal so that you can adjust your Q shape on the fly. Next up in our chain, a Studio FF compressor. Everything is entirely stock here. This just helps smooth everything out from the synth. So we'll hear it with, then I'll mute it, we'll hear it without. Especially when you're dealing in the synth world, a lot of things were homogenized, sterilized to be really at the same velocity. Nice to have this. You can of course crank the ratio, make things really bricked down and fit in a finite space, but this is just a nice way to keep everything level and uniform. Next up in our chain is an amp block with no cab. This is the 59 Bassman, the normal channel, and this is really just here to tone shape our synth wave. It's just nice to have the ability to go in and EQ things, and what better way than with this super powerful and amazing amp block within the Fractal system. What I have queued up here, almost entirely stock settings here, but I brought the master volume down to 5, otherwise you get a horrifically distorted tone. Just cleans up real nice. I brought the bass down a little bit, the treble up a tad. You can hear what those knobs do. And the mid knob. there you have it. Everything else is set stock, including the presence knob, which is at 5. Just gives us a little bit more of that treble bite. You can take that down too. But for this song, this synth presence knob stays on. We can also go to the input EQ. We can dial things in and out as we please. I don't have anything in our amp block for a high cut or a low cut, but if you need more or less, this is a great place to do it in the tone shaping realm before we hit the chorus. Now, one thing you may have noticed on the ideal page is this little illuminated dot on the cut switch. We've added a modifier, control switch 1. So the cut switch will stay engaged until you engage the control switch, which will shut the cut switch off. I've titled this pedal Booty as it brings in more low end. Let's hear what that does. Now that's fun. For this particular song, Don't You Want Me Baby by the Human League, you're going to want this cut switch on, but for a lot of practical uses, you are the bass player, the low end in a multi-instrumental band. You're going to want that cut switch off for certain passages at the very least, if not all the time, depending on how your amp, EQ, and front of house sends are set. Up next in the chain, we have the chorus block, a digital stereo chorus, because it's the 80s. You're not really complete without a chorus type sound. This is set to very modest settings, a low rate of 0.3 Hertz, a mix level just below 20%, and our depth at 37.5%. With that off, we get our synth dry. Then on. Adds a nice texture to everything. I've also added a secondary channel, which brings up the depth to 50% and takes the mix up to 37.5%. Makes a big difference. You can get really into that 80s sound, or you can keep things tame with our channel A. Very nice to have at the click of a switch. You can also turn on or off the chorus at your leisure. We also have a variant of this preset where everything else is the same except we swap out the chorus for a pitch detune, dual stereo detune. On this first channel we have plus or minus 3 cents. We are mixed to 25%. We have a little bit of a low cut at 186 Hertz, my 3-digit lucky number. That sounds like this. You can spread the field even further with channel B, where we have plus or minus 7.5 cents. And that is a great alternative to a chorus if you so choose, but it's always nice to start with your stock basic tone and then add all of your effects at the end. You could put phasers, flangers, ring mods, whatever you'd like at the end. And it all works as long as it serves the song. And last but not least, we have reverb. In the 80s, everything was pretty dry, but if you want a little bit, we have a studio reverb, pretty stock. I took the time down to 1 3/4 second and the mix down to 5. So here's a tap dry and with reverb. It is worth mentioning that if you're going to utilize the synth block in any of your Fractal presets, you may want to consider playing all of your parts up an octave from where you would normally have them on the fretboard. This is really going to help you keep finger noise down, whether you're using floating thumb or palm muting. If you're playing with a pick, it's going to keep the tracking nice and consistent. This is a mono engine. You can't do polyphonic synth things. You're going to want to eliminate that finger noise, keep the tracking at its peak, which you're going to be able to do with higher pitches. And then playing in the low register really kind of falls apart in the synth engine, especially on extended range instruments or 5-string, 6-string basses. In the low end, use the shift and transpose functions within the engine to get that low end that you need, and you'll be right as rain. Well, that about does it for our bass tutorial on 80s synth bass and Don't You Want Me Baby by the Human League. Thank you again to Harper Aurora for putting this request in after purchasing the bass pack on the Gumroad store. I learned a lot putting this together, compiling all of these pieces, and I cannot wait to implement this into any number of songs that I have to play and are already slated for this summer on the gigging circuit. Now, if this was helpful to you in your bass journey, or perhaps just on your fractal tone journey, there are plenty of other videos throughout the channel that you can check out. Other tutorials of tone, Fractal 101s. There's gear reviews, lessons, playthroughs, etc. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.